All right, y'all. So, just in time for the holidays, I'm going to bring you guys the best albums that I have come across in 2024, as well as songs. And honestly, this is the best year of music that we come across in a while. I honestly really had a hard time trying to find a bad album this year. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some duds, but there were some that were just kind of like deemed forgettable for the most part, but nothing really terrible. And the ones that were terrible, I mean, you know that they were terrible. So, I mean, that's the good thing. Like, you would see the album and you would just be like, yeah, that's terrible. I don't even need to hear it. Like, I could just sample a few songs I knew they were terrible. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some of the honorable mentions and go over the best songs and albums of 2024. So with that being said, let's kick this off. Okay, so one of my first honorable mentions has to go to Linkin Park. They've really impressed me with their latest album, and it really took me by surprise too, because when I first heard The Emptiness Machine, I was honestly not impressed. I was not impressed at all. And then I heard Heavy as the Crown, and I was absolutely blown away with how good it was. Mike's rapping in particular hasn't been this good since like the Hybrid Theory / Meteora days. And, you know, after hearing that song, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give this new record a chance. And to be honest with you, it was a lot like their old demo tape from 1997, but like they decided to branch off in a different direction rather than branching off from like the standard Linkin Park stuff that they have been doing in the 2000s and 2010s. They decided to kind of just branch off from like their old demo tapes and just kind of start from there. Kind of like starting like going back from the trunk of the tree and then starting off with a new branch, if that makes sense. So I like to call this a whole new branch of Linkin Park, and honestly, this is a smart way to go. And I can't wait to hear the next album with Emily Armstrong. I bet they're probably going to do like maybe something similar to Meteora, or maybe they'll totally blow our minds and do something completely different from their usual style. We'll see. But I'm really excited for Linkin Park's future after listening to this album. Even though this wasn't like my particular favorite album of all time, I was really impressed from what I heard. So good job, Linkin Park. Another honorable mention that I gotta give is Lady Gaga's Harlequin album. I've always been a fan of Lady Gaga's more jazzy stuff. And, you know, I really liked her cover of Frank Sinatra's That's Life. Now, what I wasn't a fan of was Fully a Doo-Doo the movie. When I went and saw that with one of my good friends, Ryan, like, I was kind of expecting it to be like A Star is Born. And even though I knew all the negative reviews were kind of pouring in the time I saw that movie, I was like, you know what? Give it a chance. It's Lady Gaga. She's singing. I feel like, okay, it's more musical based, but come on. I mean, you got Joaquin Phoenix as Joker and Lady Gaga as Harlequin. I mean, how could you potentially mess that up? Oh boy, I know what they did. And even though it still wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen, I didn't go to the clerk and demand my $20 or whatever I paid back. But I was just disappointed that the whole freaking movie was just basically based off a courtroom, off a crime he committed with the first movie. And then a lot of the singing between him and Lady Gaga were just sequences from like him daydreaming. Like, I was like, man, I wish they kind of put more drama into it between Harlequin and the Joker. And even though there was some of that in the movie, it just wasn't really all that ongoing. There wasn't a whole lot of dialogue. It was just more daydreaming, fantasizing, and dealing with this damn court case that he had going on. So, is it worth a watch? Sure. Just not really worth the whole sit through. Maybe just watch bits and pieces of it. But yeah, it really wasn't all that expressive. Anyway, I'm here to talk about music, not movies. So let's go on with the number 5 best album of 2024 is A Summer Story by Laser Club. And man, I actually got introduced to this group with Criminal Nights, which I really, really wished I put in last year's list, but it didn't get released until December 18th, 2023. And I'm like, man, I don't know if this should really fit on a 2024 list if it came out in 2023. kind of hurt my soul a little bit. But A Summer Story, even though it doesn't have as many aggressive songs, it's got a lot of nice features in it, and it definitely captures that 80s synthwave vibe still in the process. So I definitely recommend giving it a listen. But before you listen to this, seriously listen to Criminal Nights, Action, Back to the City, September. I mean, there are so many freaking good songs on this thing. It's freaking nuts. And I really wish I could have put it on this list, but I just can't, considering the year. And I wish I put it on last year's list, but again, I just did not discover it soon enough. But I gotta say, man, A Summer Story just completely rocks my socks. But anyway, on to number 4. And number 4, we got MGMT's Loss of Life. Now this album is definitely continuing on with MGMT's more nostalgic music that everybody really likes them for, whether they're doing the 80s synth pop or whether they're doing their slow, psychedelic music. There's something in here for everybody. I actually really enjoyed the Mother Nature video when that first premiered, and I also like their stylings of some of their 90s songs in their next single, when they parodied Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam. MGMT has never let me down in being creative, and honestly, this is just another album where they showcase their imagination, and I am definitely all here for it. This is definitely one band that I have just been consistently excited whenever they put out a new album, even if I know it's not going to be an absolute frequent listen in my discography. Just the fact that they put out something new just always butters my biscuit. But I gotta say, the one song that I really, really liked is Dancing in Babylon featuring Christine and the Queens, and that has been an absolute heavy rotation. So I definitely recommend. Number 3. Okay, so I honestly gotta say, this is gonna turn some heads a little bit, because honestly, this isn't really an album that I would really say is really a new album. So if you don't know, Black Sabbath have collaborated with their former lead singer, Tony Martin, and they decided to re-release some old Black Sabbath albums from the 80s and the 90s and decided to give them a complete remaster. And so, even though these are from the 80s and the 90s, yes, my next album that I put on here is Forbidden by Black Sabbath. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Joe, that was released in 1995. How could you put this on this 2024 list when this is an album from almost 30 years ago? Let me get to it. One of the things that they wanted to improve on was the mixing and the mastering of some of these albums. And my God, this Forbidden album just sounded like a completely different record. It almost sounded like a new record from the band. Honestly, that's kind of why I had to put it on here, because just the mixing and the mastering of what went on in this album was just absolutely insane. If you compared, there was a good video uploaded on YouTube that showed the comparison between the 1995 original and the 2024 remaster, and yeah, I mean, as far as remasters go, this has definitely got to be one of the greatest remasters to ever happen. But it also could be because the 1995 version was so mixed horribly. I just thought I would just give this one another chance. Why the heck not? Give it the recognition it deserves. I highly, highly, highly recommend The Loser Takes It All. I also highly recommend Kiss of Death, which is another absolute gem of a song that Black Sabbath has done. There's just so many good things on here. It's ridiculous. And now, number 2, we got something more on the electronica side. This is Imaginal Disc. And I was listening to this album all the way through. This is just one of those albums that you have to listen to all the way through, because it's just so good. It's got so much going for it. Highly recommend it. I mean, this album put Brad from Brad Taste in Music in tears, and an album that does that, I mean, has got to be worth a listen, right? I mean, This album was just absolutely, like, when I listened to it myself, I was absolutely blown away. Everything was done with perfect precision. The melodies are absolutely fantastic. I was just blown away from this record when I first heard it. Definitely recommend. And now number 1, we got one of the most hard-working musicians, especially this year, because he's released, as far as I'm doing this recording, he did 24 releases this year alone. He did the Soda Popology, which I reviewed earlier in the year, but he also did a collaboration album with John Salem, and it's called Sea Anthems. And I gotta tell you guys, if you have not heard this album, you definitely need to check it out. Especially just give it a download, support IACon, donate a few bucks, put it on a CD, burn it on a CD, just play it in your car. Heck, it's on streaming services too, so even if you don't want to, necessarily purchase the album, you can always just stream it on YouTube Music or Spotify, and just freaking go on a freaking drive in a nice summer sunset. My God, this just hits. This just absolutely hits. Anyway, guys, that's my review for the top 5 albums. Now for the top 5 songs, I'm going to go with Multiply Donny Benet for number 5, just because he is out there bringing killer bass lines back. And even though this was also released closer to 2023, I mean, his album came out in 2024, so I feel like this counts. But man, the sleek bass lines on this thing, absolutely amazing. Number 4 has to go with Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar. Even though I liked Beat the Grams more as a diss track, just the fact that you made this diss track toward Drake a hit song is just absolutely savage. And man, I just gotta say, R.I.P. to Drake's career, because it's not looking good. Number 3 is a bar song by Tipsy, or a bar song by Shaboozey. Absolutely catchy country song. It's got great melodies. The guitar work is absolutely fantastic. The production is top notch. It took me a while to get into it, and then I heard it a few times on the radio, and I was immediately hooked. So, good job, Shaboozey. This is a hell of a song. It's no question why it's been on the top 10 charts for so many months now. Number 4, the second best song goes to Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter. Again, this is another album that was just absolutely fantastic. I just didn't have any room to put it in my top 5, but man, I wanted to so bad, because I at least give it a mention to Espresso, because Espresso was such a good song. On top of that, I also really like Bedchem. The production on this entire album, the vocals on this album, everything was top notch. I mean, I also was impressed with how good Paris Hilton's album was. I mean, I didn't put it on my top 5. It'd probably be on my top 10, maybe number 10, just because it was such a huge improvement over her previous record. But not to get off topic, but I kind of make that comparison with Sabrina Carpenter. She really focused on her vocals. Production was really a big focus here, and it absolutely worked out to perfection. And then number 1, I have to say, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars. You guys really did it with Die With a Smile. I mean, it is an absolutely fantastic and catchy song, and I cannot stop singing it after I heard it. Absolutely fantastic song. And that's it, guys. That's my top 5 best songs, and then we have our top 5 best albums. Any albums that you guys listened to that you thought should have been on here, please comment below, or any song that you find was really impactful, feel free to comment below. This is TUL Music, and we'll be back with the worst of list soon. Cheers.